All right. Ooh, February 13th, 2024. Welcome. And we will begin with a period of meditation. So um, I will give a little bit of guidance for people. There's one or two folks still arriving, so just taking care of that. So are you posting your videos somewhere else yet? Not YouTube. Well, I haven't I haven't put up any of the recordings in quite some time. I'm behind in that particular task. So if you're asking if like you've run through all the ones on YouTube and is there like, no, they're not hiding somewhere else. They're on the Google Drive that we save them on. So I will try to get around to, boy, I'm trying to learn not to phrase things like that. I will try to. I will either do it or I will not do it. It's not something I have to try to do. No promises right now. Let us sit. Or just, taking a posture that's supportive of your bright mind, calm mind, open heart. You can close your eyes or just lower your gaze. Beginning by taking some time to scan the body, settle the body. And typically we do this either head to toe or toe to head, whichever way suits you. And so checking just the different parts of the body to feel sensations, first of all, to just enhance your awareness of the body. And then secondly, to release or relax any areas of tension or tightness. One of the aspects of this practice is discovering our body on another level of awareness. In our ordinary consciousness, ordinary daily lives, we're focused outward, focused on mental activity. And we start to bring more mindfulness to the body. We discover the subtleties of sensation. Start to see the connections between mind and body, between feelings and mind and body, so that we start to experience our lives as a system, a complex interconnected system. Cause and effect, conditionality. These become perhaps less obvious in our understanding. Certain assumptions might fall away. Start to question how we understand this system. In some ways, the most basic element of this system is the breath. Using that as a focal point, following the movement and sensations of breathing. Feeling the whole breath, breathing in, breathing out. And when the mind wanders, when we notice that, gently returning to the body and the breath, letting the breath calm the body, letting the breath calm the mind. Notice the effect on the body when the mind wanders. So when you realize you've been thinking, as you come back to the breath, also just sense the feelings in the body, the pleasant or unpleasant stresses or tensions. Tied as well to emotional states, sadness, anxiety, irritation, uplifting, brightness, joy. All part of seeing the system of mind and body. We see how skillfully using the breath has a beneficial effect on all areas I um, I've been thinking about attachment in the last couple days, and and thinking about um, the sort of strange things that we get attached to. And particularly, this was evoked by a sporting event of the past weekend, whose result was not my preference. And seeing and my daughter had the same preference, and she was very emotional. And it was interesting then to think about that, about how trivial that is, and it just got me thinking about the levels of attachment. And this afternoon in my living kindness course, we're actually on the part of the course that addresses attachment to dear ones, which is uh, talked about in the sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Majjhima Nikaya in 87, called "Born from Those Who Are Dear," and it addresses the most probably the strongest form of attachment, the attachment of a parent to their child, and in it, um, this householder, lay person, comes to the Buddha, and his son has died, um, and he's kind of you know going crazy. Says he had no more desire to work or to eat. He kept going to the charnel ground, crying, "My son, where are you? My only son, where are you?" And he goes to the Buddha, and the Buddha says, "Your faculties are not those of one in control of his own mind. Your faculties are deranged." Not, doesn't seem like a very sympathetic um, response from the Buddha, but you know, here we are. And then the guy responds, of course, my faculty, no wonder, you can't blame me for that kind of. And, and so one of the interesting things about the sutta is how various people kind of question or doubt what the Buddha is saying. And I think that's very natural, and it really points to how um, counterintuitive the Buddha's teaching is on this topic. How any ordinary person's first response when the Buddha says sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are born from those who are dear, arise from those who are dear. Suffering comes from those we love, and of course, when most people hear that idea, they're like, "Well, that doesn't make any sense. Those are the people I love." And so we go through, where this householder rejects this idea and goes, as he leaves, and he runs into some gamblers who he brings this up to them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that guy's wrong. Of course, it's joy, happiness, and joy are born from those who are dear." And you're kind of, and what we're meant to take from that is that if you agree with the gamblers and disagree with the Buddha, you're definitely on the wrong track. That would be wrong view. But then the story gets up to, as it says, eventually the story reached the king's palace. And so here we have two of my favorite characters, King Pasenadi and Queen Malika. And and Pasenadi, they're both followers of the Buddha, but she's more of a devotee, and Pasenadi then is a little more skeptical. And when Queen Malika says, "Well, if the Buddha says it, it must be right," he's like, "Oh, you're always on that guy's side." And but then I'm not sure how it's delivered, but someone says, I think I think that King Pasenadi sends someone to, oh no, Queen Malika sends one of their courtiers to one of their court people to the Buddha and ask him if that's what he really said, and that's and he returns and says, yeah, that's what he said. And so then he explains further just this idea, and by saying, well, if your son died to King Pasenadi, if your or if your if your daughter got ill or something happened to her, how would you feel? And he's like, oh yeah, right, I would feel terrible. And so they go through this sort of a series of different things that he's attached to, which include like the general, and then uh, the town, the city. Uh, let me see. I'm going to check a note here. Um, it says Kosala, Kasi, and Kosala, which I believe are cities. So, as the king, um, he's he's attached to yeah, uh, Kasi and Kosala are lands over which the king ruled. So, if you're king, you're attached to your domain. But but again, you know, uh, obviously we're attached to our children and to our, family members. And I, I don't, it's not that I agree with the gamblers or anything like that, but I think it's too simplistic to suggest that what the Buddha means is we shouldn't have these feelings or sense of connection to people, but rather the way I view it, and I write about this in Living Kindness, the way I view it is he's saying, understand the truth, and if you understand the truth, then when there is a loss, you will feel pain, but it won't be, you won't lose your senses. You won't go crazy. It'll be like painful and difficult, but you'll be able to handle it because you'll see it in this perspective of Dharma, of wisdom. Um, but again, as I say, I think it's kind of intriguing to me to start to take this to simpler issues, and particularly like a sports team, I think is a great example because our devotion to something like that, to look at what it is that creates that attachment. It's pretty clear. Like you understand, of course, you love your children, they feel like they're part of you. So yeah, we can say, okay, this is about self-view and identity and clinging to self and something that threatens who we are. But I think it's more than that uh, with children and parents. So, but again, I don't really want to try to like sort through that as much, just because I'm curious about how we become attached to things like sports teams or uh, I mean that's a particularly interesting. Like I was going to say to a political stance, but a political stance you can understand that has like worldly impact, whereas a sports team, you know, it has no worldly meaning or importance, and yet it can evoke this tremendous feeling. And so from what I understand, about this, and this is not certainly original to me, and I'm sure many of you already know this and have thought this about how people create identity through the things that they attach to, and that in earlier times, in other cultures, in more earlier cultures, one would be identified with their village, or and the or and particularly with religion, right? These are the things people kind of built their identity around their their community and religious beliefs, a huge part of that, and that because in modern industrial, post-industrial society, urban world that we live in, community is kind of lost. We have to sort of create artificial communities like we have here. Uh, and instead of our identity being wrapped up with a certain belief system, a religious belief system, it becomes wrapped up in a sports team, or it becomes the whole thing of like wearing uh, logos, like I'm a Gucci person, and I'm a Nike person, and our identity becomes wrapped up in these just things that really have no worldly import. Uh, so I guess, as usual, all I'm doing here is thinking through something in front of you guys. So, what occurs to me as I say all that is that this need, uh, that there is a need, that we feel a need for something to identify with outside of ourselves. This is, and so even though in Buddhist terms, oh no, you shouldn't be attached to things, it seems to me, maybe this is another one of those things that humans kind of seek out, and that it's not entirely unwholesome. It becomes very silly, and it can become, even as we know, destructive when people decide I'm going to, set fire to that car because my sports team lost or won. Apparently, if you're in Philadelphia, you know what I'm talking about. But you know, so it's not such a, yeah, maybe not a totally unwholesome thing. It's more about, I mean, first of all, being wise about what we choose to be attached to, and secondly, having this broad view so that we understand that this is part of life, is to be connected with things, but it is not ultimate reality. It is not reflective of ultimate truth. And so if we are taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, then these things don't overwhelm us or overtake our lives in unwholesome and destructive ways. But I thought it would be an interesting exercise almost to start to like do an attachment inventory. Wouldn't it be like, oh, okay, well, first I'm attached to my body. I'm very aware of that right now because I'm having pain in my body and I don't want. And, and as you're aging, I mean, the good thing about aging, an aging body, is generally it happens fairly slowly. So you kind of get used to the fact that you're just an old person. Yeah, like if you just woke up one day from being like 30 and like, at peak attractiveness, and then you're like 75, you'd be like, oh God, this is just so disgusting. But, it's gradual enough that it's, so there's body. Um, and of course, one of the things that came to mind as I was reflecting on this the last couple of days is the great this one line in the uh, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the Buddha's first teaching, setting in motion the wheel of Dharma, where he lists the things that are suffering, right? Body is suffering, aging is suffering, sickness is suffering, death is suffering. But then the last line in that section is, in in short or briefly, the five aggregates subject to clinging are suffering. And this is something that we can spend a lot of time on, and it's probably something I should do like some kind of a course on. So the five aggregates are body, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. And they are the five aspects of our experience that bring about uh, through their like simultaneity, that they're simultaneously happening, bring about the illusion that there is a self, or we interpret them when they are happening, which is all the time, as the self, that we define ourselves by these things. And the first one, body, so senses, how much, so the five aggregates subject to clinging, right? Which means that we cling to these five aspects of our experience. We cling to our physical experience, to our sense experience. So I'm looking at my guitar here, which you can't see. Turn one of my guitars. And I'm attached to music and I'm attached to my guitars and but particularly music as a sense, right? I'm attached to that sound. Like, how often do I go into the kitchen and go, oh, let me put some music on while I do the dishes or make dinner? Well, that's because I have attachment to hearing pleasant sounds. I'm subject to clinging to that. And so the same with food, right? Clinging to that, to all the senses. Eyes, I want, you want to have a nice art or flowers or whatever. I want to go look at the sunset. I mean, I always think it's interesting on retreats. I always see people go outside right before the Dharma talk. They're like outside, like staring at the sunset. I'm like, you're attached. We're supposed to be letting go here. In any case, so so, and then we're attached to feeling, right? We want to feel pleasant feelings. And can see how that, oh, we're attached to perception. We're attached to that is the way we understand what we're experiencing. We're attached to mental formations, volitional formations. We're attached to the things that we want to do, and we're attached to consciousness. We're attached to having really attachment to consciousness to me is almost like attachment to being alive. It's attachment to just being conscious, being aware, which is life. So, I mean, this is like the raw data or the the pure form of attachment. And out of those attachments come the things like sports teams and the all the things that we're identified with. Um, I mean, for instance, what happens if a man who loves his child finds out that what he thought was his child was actually the child of another man that his partner had, you know, you understand. So uh, that's perception, all right? Because I perceive my daughter to be my my daughter, my biological daughter. That means I label her as that. I understand that that is the truth of our connection. And if I find out that that was not true, then my perception, this changes, right? And what comes out of that? Then how do I react to that? How is my attachment to that change, right? Because I'm very attached to that perception, and it would be a painful thing because it's like I love having that belief that she is my child, and it's like I still love this person, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean, movies have been made on this. I'm sure novels have been written. So just interesting to see again, like how do we become attached? What is it about those things? Um, and and fundamentally, of course, the question is how am I creating suffering for myself through my attachments? And this is, of course, what the Buddha is teaching, This is what the Four Noble Truths are about. And, of course, when we talk about attachment and clinging, we're talking about addiction. So obviously, that's the thing that brings us, this group together, this shared aspect of experience. And I mean, I hardly need to speak it because I'm sure you've all been thinking it, or at least it's been on the edges of your consciousness that, like, oh yeah, right. Like, obviously, our attachment to drugs, alcohol, food, sex, other people, controlling people, all the different um, addictions that we deal with through recovery. Um, these are the really hardcore attachments that cause so much suffering in our lives. Um, and I'll say, uh, um, you know, I'll open this up for you, Deborah, in a moment, but I'll just say that one of the purposes of meditation, and one of the things we can do with our meditation, is to watch attachment happening and watch the causality, watch how the thought and the feeling that arises with it, and watch the letting go. You know, um, one of the things we derive from this practice, potentially, and certainly want to derive, is this ability to step into this bigger picture that sees, oh yeah, that's just a sports team. Or I'm trying to think of some other examples that aren't sports, but there are others, of course, Uh, uh, yes, I love that bakery that was on the corner and it shut down. So, I'll live. Um, that and to see our attachments, and when we're meditating, we can see them in real time as they arise just in thoughts, because, what's the primal attachment of all attachments? Attachment to self. And and thoughts that arise are identified as expressions of self, or the self speaking. And so to just see one of the things we're trying to do in meditation, by noticing thoughts and coming back to the breath, letting go of thoughts, is that when we're doing that, we are letting go of selfing. We are letting go of self, and we're training ourselves to be less attached to self. Like, these are just thoughts. They aren't me. They aren't mine. I don't have to believe them, right? Because that's the perception that I'm talking about. We don't have to believe them. I don't have to act on them. That's the volitional formations. I don't have to identify with them. I don't have to see them as expressions of me, like I am really smart, or I am really horrible person. I am this. Whenever you have the thought I am, you are creating identity. I, me, mine, right? Uh, and so we can use our practice in this way to step back and to see the big picture. I actually have taken to calling the fourth foundation of mindfulness the big picture. There's feeling, there's body, feeling, mind, and you can see they're very similar to the aggregates: body, feeling, mind, and the big picture. Uh, I think it's the most useful way to think of it. So there you go. My other team is doing better, so I'm not unhappy. It's a good thing I'm attached to more than one team. All right, kids. Deborah, what do you have to say?
Um, Thank you. It gave me a lot of food for thought. And I'm relating it to a friend of mine who's in some stage of cognitive decline.
Mhm. Aren't we
And
all, though?
yeah, we all are. Even at our peak, we all are. Um, like a year ago, she recognized that she wasn't going to travel. And then
Mhm.
6 months later, couldn't pass her driver's test,
Mhm.
realized she could sell her car, and found herself forced into a situation where she's living in a retirement community that has all those things.
Right.
But it's really interesting to, I have lunch with her like once a month, and she recognizes that sometimes she's not there. And
Mhm.
even though she's doesn't embrace the Dharma or isn't anywhere near Buddhism, she's chosen not to suffer about it.
Mhm.
And it's just like when that happens, it's like, oh, well, and when she's all together, it's great. She can
Yeah.
call bingo. But otherwise, she'll see a friend and she won't even know where she knows them, but she greets them happily
Mm.
and they greet her with love. So it's really been a joy to see and recognize what is happening and how she has let go of her image of self.
Mm.
And so that's a good lesson for me. So thank you for coordinating that realization for me.
Yeah, that's lovely. Um, yeah, I just passed my driver's test, so just to say, if you turns out if you're over 70, your license runs out in California, you have to take another. But I mean, I really admire someone like that, and I'm, I just don't envision myself being nearly so accepting. Anyway, it's not about me. I'm assuming this is Hannah, like as far as I can see, because it says Jonathan and Hannah, but
Yeah. Yes.
we don't want to make assumptions. But go ahead.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, it's Hannah. Jonathan's over
And
there.
you're in Calgary,
Yes, in another
uh,
chair.
Alberta,
Yeah, Alberta.
Canada,
Canada.
foreign country.
Yes.
Okay, now that we've established that.
Uh, yeah, thank you so much for this topic. I have been almost forced into thinking about this in the last almost 4 years. I was in a really horrible car accident in June of 2020
Ooh,
that I received a traumatic brain injury and have had 9
ooh,
surgeries in 22 months
ooh,
since that. So this idea of attachment has been very close to me since that time. And I'm really grateful for the Dhamma to really kind of guide me through this because, at first it was all this taking it so personal of like, well, what? I'm young. I'm not supposed to be going through this. This is supposed to happen later, and recognizing that it doesn't always work out how that's the attachment, my attachment to how it should
yeah.
happen, how my body should age. I shouldn't be feeling like I'm 75 at 32 because
Mm,
I already am experiencing cognitive deficits and have a lot of issues with memory and don't have the ability to talk for a very long time and recognizing that that doesn't mean that I was denied something that was owed to me. It just means that it happened the way it did. And it's all about my relationship to that attachment. And I can have a very full life by just adjusting my perception
mm,
for how these things are supposed to go. And so, in a way, I'm grateful that it did happen at 32. So now I can practice this throughout the rest of my time here and maybe get to enjoy things more rather than being attached to how they should be or how I want them to be. So thanks.
wow. Beautiful. Thank you, Hannah. I feel like maybe you need to step aside and let you guys be the teachers here. I'm very impressed with that. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like acceptance is the answer to our problems today, right? I mean, I'm definitely attached to walking, and really like I am doing a really poor job of letting go of, you know, of wanting to not have pain. So it's good to hear people talk about dealing with things and think about that, what I might do. Although I understand there's thing oxycodone or something that's supposed to be good for that. I don't know. Might have to try that. No, probably not. Okay. Sorry. Just kidding. Um, Anybody else have any inspiring stories or no, I'm just kidding. Something, anything, please, feel free. Vicky, Victoria.
Hi, that was a wonderful share. And this is, yeah, just a question. So community, and having the AA, group of drunks kind of thing. The community of AA is super powerful
Yeah.
in my experience, and the way meetings function as a kind of a moment in time when we somehow connect to create something powerful, and the connection. How do I have, well, and then also Sangha, but making common cause with wise people, or I don't know, I mean, and wise or not wise, I don't know, because Sangha can be inclusive, right?
Sure.
So this business of connectivity, or feels to me related to attachment. Now, I don't know how, but there's something's going off in me about that. And I wonder whether you have some ideas about it.
Well, I think it's like, the two forms of desire, tanha and chanda. So tanha is craving, it's an unwholesome craving. And chanda is like a spiritual longing that, so we could essentially say it's about right intention. So, so attachment, clinging is trying to hold on to things that are impermanent and that don't, aren't leading to something wholesome. Whereas, being connection, if we look at it as aspect of right intention, connection is about loving kindness and compassion. And there isn't a clinging to it. The Buddha, in his final days, this is in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, when his two closest monks, Sariputta and Mahamoggallana, have passed away. And he says, I should pull this out and look at it but he says, it feels as if the Sangha is empty. So you can hear his, I would say, sadness, but he doesn't, but he then quickly, and this is how it's recorded, so it's not like we're not getting it's not a deposition here we're getting, but he says, but I'm not suffering about it, and so again, like the language is important. I think what he's saying is, I'm not experiencing dukkha, which to me, an aspect of dukkha is confusion or delusion. For it to be dukkha, it's one of the aspects of dukkha is that we don't understand what's going on. We're lost in it.
Mm.
He's not lost in whatever sorrow he has. He just feels, unpleasant Vedana, right? Like this is unpleasant. I miss them. They were lovely, but he's not like sorry. He's not like pulling his hair or what are they in the suttas apparently people they would have water their hair would be all wet, although of course the Buddha didn't have hair because he was shaving his head, but um, you know, he wasn't raging or freaking out. It's just there's sadness. So yeah, so I think yes, we can. I guess the point, what you're asking, and I think is, can we have connection and without it being what the Buddha is talking about, the cause of suffering? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. And I think that for most of us, you know, that that it's not like you have most of us have like some kind of pure connection, which I would say would be one in which it's unconditional. Like
Mhm.
if that person dies, I won't be upset, kind of thing. Like, no, I mean, but again, I think that's why I think wisdom is so vital to this, that yeah, just as Hannah was describing, there's been loss, but she's holding it with wisdom, and that's all the difference, right? It's if you hold that loss with delusion and with grasping, then you're in this state of frustration and anger and grief, and if you're holding it with wisdom, then there may be sa- some sadness or disappointment, but there's also this whole other view, which is like, oh, there's this potential, or there's what are the good things that come out of this, and what am I learning from this, and that's what we right want to bring to all of this practice, is that view that this is how things are, and it's always an opportunity to learn and to grow if I'm willing to look at it in that way.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, if you weren't at my last Friday night class for Spirit Rock, I I gave a talk that I think a lot of people might be interested in. It was a kind of I called it the roots of Dharma and recovery, because I've been trying to. I decided with Spirit Rock particularly that I thought it would be wise to get back to kind of what is this? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? So it's I think it was a pretty interesting talk, and it should be available on Dharma Seed. Uh, if it isn't, well, let's look it up right now before I go. See if it's there. Okay. Um, no, they have January up, but it doesn't look like they have this one up, but it'll probably be up soon, in case you're interested. Otherwise, upcoming, we still have a couple of spots left on the retreat. There's like a double room, and there's some dorm rooms available. And I believe we still have some scholarship money too, if people need that help. And March 16th, Ann Bolger Peruzzi and I will be teaching a day long in Santa Cruz. And then in April, I'm going to be teaching a class series in San Francisco for the San Francisco Dharma Collective. All of that is on my website because I updated my website. I did not put all the new talks on there. One of these days I'll get around to that. All right, you guys, nice to see you. Thanks for showing up and keeping me sane, or relatively sane.
no attachment to that sports team.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
sure.
I'll see you this afternoon.
All right, Steve, good. Thanks. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Mike.
Ta-ta.